please take out a piece of paper and follow along by taking notes. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. When we are solving for a variable x, we're going to use these rules, but we're going to reverse them. So the very first thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to distribute the 3 and distribute the positive 4 to the x and the negative 2 and to the 3 and the negative 1x. When I distribute, I multiply. 3 times 1 is 3, bring down the x. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Make sure you are taking notes. You will have to show your notes at the end of today. Positive 4 times 3 is positive 12. Positive 4 times negative 1 is negative 4 with an x. Now we have a left side and a right side. On the left side, let's look at what we can combine. Both these terms contain an x. 3x combined with the negative 4x, 3 subtract 4 is a negative 1. If you need to use a calculator, feel free to do that. The negative 6, which does not have an x, and the positive 12, which does not have an x, can be combined. Negative 6 and positive 4 combine to give you a positive 6. All right, at this point, now I'm following these instructions. So on the side that contains the variable x, I'm looking by adding or subtracting to move either the negative 1 or the positive 6. So there's a right and a wrong answer here. We're going to choose a value that's not touching the x. We can see negative 1 is stuck with the x, so opposite of adding 6 is subtracting 6. So I've taken care of adding and subtracting. Now opposite of being stuck with an x, which means multiplying, opposite of multiplying is dividing. Divided by exactly what you see. 4 divided by negative 1, feel free to use a calculator if you need to, is negative 4. Keep this in front of you and now take the paper that was provided to you. In order to get your points today, you will have to show the notes that you're taking. Okay, at this time you're going to take out this piece of paper, press pause on this video, complete this first problem, and make sure to show all of your work. Come back to the video and press play after you finish this problem. In order to get credit for this problem, you have to have all the steps. So here are all my steps. If I have the correct answer but not the steps to justify it, you will receive no credit. If you correctly answered this question, you should receive an answer of x equals negative 16. Feel free to use a calculator as you go through the operations if you need that support. All right, back to our notes. Please write down this second example. Just like the previous one, I'm going to start by distributing the number that is in front of the parenthesis sign. Now here's where it's kind of confusing. Not only am I going to distribute a 2, it's a negative 2. So the 3x remains out front. Negative 2, when you distribute, you multiply. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. Negative 2 times positive 1 is a negative 2. Now on this side of the equation, I can combine the terms that have x's. When you combine, you're not multiplying, you're adding or subtracting. If you need to grab a calculator and type in 3 subtract 10 to get negative 7, that's okay, whatever your needs are. So 3 subtract 10 is negative 7. Don't forget the x. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Okay, we're ready now. On the side that contains the x, we're going to move the number that's not touching the x, which happens to be the negative 2. What's opposite of subtracting 2 would be adding 2. I'm left with negative 7x. 12 plus 2 is 14. Now the negative 7 is stuck with the x. Opposite of multiplying is dividing. Again, if you need to grab a calculator and type in 14 divided by negative 7 to achieve the correct answer, that's okay. Or you can use the mental math. Please press pause on this video, and I'd like you to attempt this problem. have your notes out, show every single step in order to get credit. This will be worth 6 points. There's no going back to this. You do need to achieve the correct answer, so your work needs to support the correct answer, and your correct answer should be x equals -2. All of the steps need to match up to how to receive an answer of x equals negative. The third example we're going to write down is I'm going to put a 1 underneath each of these numbers. When I distribute this time, I'm going to multiply the tops and multiply the bottoms. So distributing is multiplying. 3 times 8 is 24. 4 times 1 is 4. Don't forget about the x. Bringing down the subtraction sign. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 1 is 4. Now let's see, can we reduce this? So if you know this mental math, go ahead. Otherwise, grab a calculator, and I can see 24 divided by 4 is the same as 6, and 12 divided by 4 is the same as 3. Okay, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So on the side that has the x, let's get rid of the value that's not touching the x. Opposite of subtracting 3 is adding 3. 9 plus 3 is 12. Opposite of being stuck with something, which is multiplying, opposite of multiplying is dividing. And 12 divided by 6 is 2. Using your notes as a guide, please start by putting 1s underneath the 4 and the 6 and follow along just like we did in the previous problem. All right, when you get through this problem, let me do it quickly in my mind here. You should get an answer of x equals 3. Again, you'll get no credit if not all the work is shown to receive an answer of x equals 3. So simply writing down x equals 3, or if I can't follow all of your steps, you won't get credit. How do we go from here to an answer of x equals 3 for this equation? Press pause, we're moving on. What's different about this example, notice this is not parentheses, this is absolute value. And so the number one mistake students try to make is they want to distribute through. You cannot distribute through absolute value. Again, in order to get credit for today, you need to be able to take notes and show your notes by the end of class along with the work. So I want to start by getting this by itself. So on the left-hand side, we're going to first move the value that's not touching the absolute value. Also, a lot of students want to try to subtract here to get a 3. We're going to move this positive 5. Opposite of positive 5 is negative 5. Okay, opposite of multiplying is dividing. Oops, sorry. Negative 10 divided by negative 2, 2 negatives make a positive. Now here's the thing, if you remember from last week, absolute value gives us 2 answers. Remember, absolute value is the distance from 0. So for instance, there's 2 numbers that are a distance from 0, both positive 2 and negative 2. So 2 answers. So we're going to take this value and I'm going to set it to both positive 5 and I'm going to set it equal to negative 5 and I'm going to solve. So plus 3. Opposite of subtracting 3 is adding 3, and I get one answer of 8. Plus 3, and I have one answer of negative 2. So I have 2 answers that make this mathematical equation true. Please press pause and find this 4th equation. Follow along just like we did in our notes. You're going to come up with 2 answers showing all of your work. Remember to split it into 2 parts. And you should receive answers of both 9 and negative 1. Make sure to show your work. We are working right now on accuracy. So if you don't get it the first time, go back again. Again, x equals 9 and x equals negative 1. Without work, you will not receive credit. All right, let's go on to the 5th example. Again, this is absolute value, so we need to get it by itself. I have something stuck with it and something separated by subtraction. We're always going to get rid of the adding or the subtraction first. So opposite of subtracting 1 is adding 1. And I have 2/3 times x minus 2 equals 4. Okay, so let's first here start getting rid of this 3. Divided by 3. Opposite of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 to both the left and to the right. Dividing by 3 and multiplying by 3 cancel, and I have 2 times x minus 2. On the left-hand side, 3 times 4 is 12. My goal is to get the absolute value by itself, just like the previous problem. Opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Once the absolute value is by itself, we're going to set it equal to both 6 in this case and to the negative, which is negative 6. And now I'm going to do the work to achieve 2 answers. Plus 2 plus 2. Opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. And 6 plus 2 is 8. Opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. And negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. So I have 2 answers once again. This is definitely a hard problem. So we're going to go to this problem right here, show all of your work. So start by subtracting 5, multiplying by 6, dividing by 3, okay? And then we're going to get 2 answers. Show all of your work. You want answers of 11, x equals 11, and x equals negative 13. Just having the answers without the correct work would give you no credit. Your work must support the correct answers. All right, our final example of today. Let's get this by itself once again. Remember, we're not distributing. This is absolute value. So I'm going to start by getting rid of adding or subtracting on the side that has the absolute value brackets. Subtract 5, subtract 5. 21 subtract 5 is 16. Now the 4 is stuck with the x plus 1, this absolute value. Opposite of being stuck. Stuck means to be multiplied. Opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. And once the absolute value brackets, 16 divided by 4 is 4. Once this is by itself, I'm going to set it equal to both 4 in this case and to negative 4. This is a review from last week. Opposite of adding 1 is subtracting 1. Again, you must take your notes. 1 answer is 3. Opposite of adding 1 is subtracting 1. And negative 4 and negative 1 combine to give you negative 5. 2 answers. This is your final problem. Again, our goal is to first get this by itself by adding 8 and dividing by 3. Show all of your work. You should get answers of x equals 8 and x equals negative 4. When you have completed all of the work, please take this along with your notes. Make sure your name is on both and it says period 3 up to the substitute. Thank you.